Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Monica Wheaton. I'm the VP of Customer Success here at ECI for our Residential Home Construction Division. I work across all 9 of our products now, and I'm super excited to be here today with 2 of my good friends. Part of my job is to make sure that, one, our customers are using all their software appropriately and to the best that they can, but then also to work with people in the industry to help bring you some knowledge and some different insights so you can also manage your company a little bit better as well. And so today we have Matt Collins and Jason Sherman with us. We are going to be doing they are going to be doing, I get to just enjoy just like you, but they're going to be doing a presentation called 2 Summer Projects to Tackle in One Day, which I'm really excited about. I'm assuming it has to do with cleaning up some data and getting some reports and really analyzing some stuff just based on how I know Matt and Jason and their company. But I will let them get started in just a bit. I just wanted to let you guys know that if you do have questions, this GoToWebinar is different than probably Teams or Zoom, which you're used to now. But if you have questions, there's that side control panel. You can type your questions in the question block there, and I will monitor them. I will probably save most of them to the end, but if it's a point of clarification, I can ask it at that time. We are recording the presentation, and we do encourage you to rewatch it, share it with your teams as well if you find the information to be valuable. And it will also be posted on our website. So with that, I wanted to welcome everyone and welcome Matt. Matt, did you want to introduce yourself and kick us off on the webinar?
Be glad to. Thank you, Monica. Anna, good as always to see you. And you do guess correctly. We are going to be dealing some
awesome. I love data and reports.
So well done. This is a fun one. When we were thinking through what to build for this webinar, I spend a lot of time, talking to folks at not a high level, but kind of strategically the direction. And this time we were just rolling up our sleeves and getting into the weeds of the data. So I'm going to go through and hopefully provide the listeners with an opportunity to pick up some tips on how to fix their data, clean it up for the benefit of the organization as well as themselves, and hopefully give very tactical steps on how to do so. So we can get started here. We are the Mainspring group, and Jason and I, and we got a couple others in tow. We got John and Ethan spend a lot of time working with customers, specifically with customers in the Mark systems, customers that subscribe to our dashboard, the Pulse. Steve is our developer, and Patty, who is a CFO financial whiz, helps a lot of our customers from the finance side and seeing the information from a CFO's perspective. And Maya is our office admin. So that is the team, fun group of people that tolerate me being around for some time. So appreciate them immensely. We do a lot of stuff, boutique consulting and the Pulse are probably the 2 predominant. So from like the boutique consulting, we help with the stuff that we're dealing with today, a lot of cleanup work. We definitely help a lot of our customers with that. A lot of times people have been using the system for quite some years, a lot of cooks in the kitchen over the years. Maybe somebody new comes in and we help, and a lot of the times we are benefited from the fact that our customers, a lot of them are Pulse subscribers, and that's our dashboard. I'm going to touch on that in a second here, but that's predominantly what we do. We help builders with operational efficiencies in their system, anywhere from the processes around contracts all the way through closing and warranty. Monica mentioned the Mark systems, ECI, we'll record this and provide it. We link to all of the ones that we've done with ECI, but we also do some webinars ourselves. Mainspring Group Presents is the name of that. And Monica actually joins us for quite a few of those. So all of our resources that we've created, all the content that we've created in webinars and articles, we from time to time have articles published in Professional Builder, so appreciate them. And they're all on our resources page. And this one will be shortly after the recording. So love for you to go to the resources page, and you can pick up by any topic and watch any webinar that you want. To the topic today, this is a fun quote Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. So I had to write that one down. I'm not French, but perfection is not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. And I really like that quote. One of the things that we are passionate about is getting done what needs done. We're very practical and pragmatic. We gotta move the needle. We got to take action. We got to produce results. But in the wake of doing so, going back and cleaning your data, making sure that the system is always without noise and is running at peak performance. And so perfection, getting rid of the noise is what makes a perfect data set. So we want to talk through that today. And so our agenda for today, we're going to talk about like why summer projects. What are we specifically talking about with now that we're in the summer and we're very busy? Why are we looking at these two projects? And then Jason and I were trying to come up with a good analogy for kind of what we're talking about, and he came up with a phrase, pruning the noise. And so we're going to talk about a first project will be prune the noise and looking at our offerings and what we're selling and removing the dead limbs or the limbs that are no longer producing fruit and prune the noise, removing that dead so that we can allow the rest of the plant, the rest of the tree to thrive. And then doing so from first on our offerings, what we sell, and then next on our costing, our budgets, our accounting side. And then just a real quick piece of how those that do subscribe to the Pulse are able to use it in order to really enhance their ability to do what we're looking at today. And then just wrap up with some conclusions and if there's any questions that come in. So first, summer projects. The summer projects, right now in the, I'm trying to move the stuff off my other slide, so forgive me real quick, but the opportunities to clean up and purge info and get everything working better. Summertime is not typically the time that you do that. Summertime is more of a time really focusing on production, especially as we get into August, September, where we're really driving towards settlements this year, closings this year. And we don't spend a lot of time in organizing and pruning and cleaning up. And both Jason and I and our team, we each have worked in home building specifically, not from a dashboard development side specifically, but actually in the chairs and working through. You know, I started in estimating, purchasing, and the systems that we have, you know, no matter what your ERP is, and certainly, you know, builders that are in Mark systems, the systems that we have function and can function really, really well. However, over time, and as I said at the intro, you know, more cooks in the kitchen over time, and people get promoted, move on, and now more people, different people, and they have different approaches, or developments come and go, models come and go, elevations, options, cost codes, all these things come and go. We are very practical in our approach, which means hey, you need that new model available for sale, got it, it's in there and it's ready to go. We don't spend a lot of time coming behind that. And so in the wake of all the change that we take and we have to take, especially as we focused on selling so we can get into the summer so we can produce and close houses, we don't have a tendency to go backwards. The downside of that is obviously it produces some noise we'll talk about here in a second, but the reality is that we eventually, it becomes less of just simply an inconvenience and actually begins to be debilitating. And we want to attack those, but we don't have the time to do it. And so what I hope that I can give you is a couple steps here to be able to do these very quickly. You can sit down in one day and attack this and get these knocked out. So first thing we're going to talk about is this pruning the noise and what we sell. And the noise, old data in the system, it slows you down. You're the one that's in there making it work. It slows you down because you're seeing things that you don't need to care about. But it also increasingly, not only increasingly slows you down, it increasingly relies on your tribal knowledge. When we do implementations with the Pulse, which is our dashboard that sits on Mark systems, when we do implementations, a lot of times we'll sit through the implementations and we'll say, okay, this community looks a lot, oh, that community's in the past, or that model we're not even selling anymore, or yeah, don't worry about that. Every time that hand wave gesture occurs, and don't worry about that, that's noise. It pollutes the info. And so we really want to eliminate that, reduce that to eliminate it so that we can move forward effectively. Now within mark systems, everything that we're doing today is there are definitely multiple ways to do the things in mark systems that we're going to be talking about. A very common way in a lot of areas is to use a very well-developed user interface, the UI, with the exports and the templates. I've really appreciated what the mark systems and the developers and those that are helping with the user experience have done over the past several years, where they're clearly putting effort into ensuring that there's exports that we can take it and put it in Excel, do whatever manipulation we want, and then stick it back into the system. And that really is significant because it helps us work on mass data, not a line at a time. And so there are many places in mark systems that enable purchasing and estimating to be able to use those imports and exports. This is an example here, but typically you find them once you're into a menu, you can see an export button or export or import. There's also another function that we use quite a bit when we come alongside builders and help them out, and it's an incredibly powerful function. There are some restrictions that depends on what your settings are. So if I'm using this export data to Excel, in some cases it's my preferred method, but you can still do the job if you don't have that. You just got to use the imports, exports, and some others. So there are some cases today where I'm going to show you where I would personally use the export data to Excel method to make the modification. Other cases where I would use the user interface. I certainly would say that not one is correct and another is incorrect. This really personal preference and kind of what your experience has been. But the export data to Excel is a very powerful tool because you can export and you can import many of the data sets that you use directly from Excel back into the system. So we'll look through that. Now, I mentioned a pulse a couple of times. It's just the login screen. And what the pulse is, I'll show you a screenshot later to see how it kind of comes alongside. But in this context of what we're talking about today, in cleaning up data and purging and pruning the noise, first you have to know what the noise is, because some data is incredibly necessary and important. Some data is old, stale, not used anymore. And man, when you're looking at data, they look identical. So there's some knowledge of, is this being used or not? Once you find out what the noise is, and then you have to go remove it. So what the pulse can help you do is that first element of this, knowing what the noise is. And we have some tools and functions to give you very quick, immediate insight into, yep, that's the noise, let's get it out. All right, let's dig into pruning the noise, what we sell. I'm going to go through several different elements of mark systems and how a builder has it set up and places that you can prune the noise. Now, I'm sure that on this call, we have a varying range, or people watching later, we have a varying range of skill sets, accountabilities, responsibilities. I think I have 7, 8 different things that we're going to talk through. So if you're like, yep, that's not me, or I have no idea what he's talking about, just skip ahead 2 minutes and you'll get to the next one. So I'm going to hit them all individually. Certainly all together as 2 different projects will certainly enhance your system, but you can tackle any one of these things and things will improve just through that. So the first one that I want to look at is looking at models. Now, in the model, when we have mark system speak, the model is the base, is the plan, the magnolia, for instance. A model sits above any specific development. And often models are, they transcend communities. We have the Magnolia available in 3, 4, 5 communities. If the Magnolia is a new plan, we create it in the model and then we go put it into the different developments. In some cases, the Magnolia is no longer necessary. We discontinue that. It was a townhome. We're done building townhome product forever, or whatever the case is. We want to go ahead and mark those as inactive. Now, I want to spend a quick minute on different statuses in mark systems. If we make something inactive, and in some cases you may see it called disabled, or you may see it say something else called deactivated. But that idea, when Mark Systems gives you the option to flag something as inactive, if you do not need that data anymore, take the opportunity to mark it as inactive, disable it, as opposed to trying to figure out how to delete it. Mark Systems is working to protect the integrity of the system by giving you the ability to just say, just don't pay attention to this in the future. Tell me it's inactive, so, and I can look at disabled elevations if I want, but I won't see them in my initial list. But don't delete them. The system relies on a lot of that artifact legacy data that needs to be there so it can reference it if it needs to. So if the inactive function is incredibly powerful because I function as if I'm eliminating the noise, as if I'm deleting it. I don't need to see it and pay attention to it. However, it retains it at a place where it needs to see it in the future. So at times we'll have customers ask us, can we just delete this model out because we don't need this model anymore? Do not do that. Just mark it inactive. So, and at times, like I said, you'll see inactive, disabled, or deactivated, or whatever the case is. That's all in that same. There's another thing that you'll see from time to time, and it's in options or in elevations, and that's sales restrict. The notion is there that it's restricted from sales, and we're going to look at one specific case here in a second. But so you can mark things as inactive and or sales restricted in some examples. And the other option, there are times where actually deleting it is appropriate. There's, again, a lot of this is personal preference, but but there are ways to delete information. Matter of fact, there's some of those exports that we'll look at here in a second, where you can flip a flag from delete no to yes, and you can get that data out of there. It's actually gone. It's not inactive, it's actually gone. So there are times where you want to delete. So just, you're safest to assume that, do I want to delete this thing I'm looking at? If you have the ability to mark it as inactive, do that, don't delete it, okay? So we'll talk about each of those stats. So, all right, let's get back into models. If we want to clean up our model list, the way I personally would do it is, and again, other people will have different opinions, I'm sure, but the way that I would personally do it is I would go to export data to Excel, which is in system admin, and then I would I would select model master. And when I do that, I'd click on select all and I'd hit export. Now, when I export that, I'll get an Excel sheet. It opens up an Excel sheet, another window, and here's all of my models, for instance. If there's any particular model that I'm done selling, for instance, in this case, I'm no longer going to be selling the aspen, the cedar. I change those no's, those n's to y's, yeses. And once I do that, I can paste that, or I can put that into my clipboard. And down in the export to spreadsheet menu option, you see that sixth box down on the left, or eighth box, I suppose, where it says import, and it is not grayed out, which means that I can import this information back into Mark Systems. Now, there's other cases where you can export the data, look at it, do whatever you want to do, but you can't import it. Again, it's Mark Systems helping protect you from accidentally or from incorrectly importing something into a place where it's connected to other tables and data. So if you see something that is grayed out, it's not an error, it's Mark Systems making sure you don't jack up your system. But in this case, models is at the highest level. I can then import this. And so if I was cleaning up these models, I would export my models. Again, I'd have to know which models are no longer necessary. I would change those no's to yeses, n's to y's. I would put that in my clipboard and import it back in. And instantly, those models are no longer active. They're no longer in the system as active. Now, I would also then, and in other situations, maybe I don't want to discontinue that model altogether across the board. However, I do want to remove a model from a development, for instance, or maybe I got a development that just is finishing up and I don't want there to be, and I know I'm not going to be selling any more homes in there. I want to make those elevations within that development as inactive. And so again, I would personally use the export to spreadsheet. There's some other options here, but it's one that I see as function the best. I would click select all, and I would take the spreadsheet that comes, and I would change whatever community I'm working in. Maybe I'm in Abington Borough here, so I'm an AB, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a yes next to any sales restrict. Now, you can, as I said earlier, you got sales restrict and inactive. In this particular case, I'm going to switch anything that I do not intend to sell again to both sales restrict as well as inactive. But there are some cases where maybe I'm keeping the, I think the R red is the redwood. I'm keeping the redwood completely, so that stays in N. And perhaps, maybe it's another development. There is a case where I want a contract to be allowed to be written in the future, but I want the salesperson who's running that contract to know that there's something else going on here. So Mark Systems some time ago added the feature in sales restrict where you can add a W for warning, or it's a warning of an agreement of sale. And what this does is if you put a W in your sales restrict column here, it will give a warning, then it will say to the person that warning of agreement of sale. Now, if you don't have clarity in the organization about what that means, then if you see that, ask. But a lot of times builders will do that in a development that's finished out, but there's 6 specs left, for instance. So they'll flip all of their current models and elevations that are spec homes that exist. They'll flip those to W's, and then everything else becomes a yes, sales restrict, everything else. And the salesperson knows that this is on its way out and it's only about a spec. Or other clients of ours, when they want to discontinue maybe one model, they used to use the Magnolia, but now they developed the Beechwood, and it's a little bit nicer of a plan. They don't want to offer both in the same community. However, they don't want to just shut off a model and elevation set tomorrow because they got prospects that are working through the system, whatever. They'll say, sales, when you see a warning, just know that a model and elevation is expiring within the next 30 days or whatever the case is. So the broader point is take advantage of the warning when you see it. Those are couple use cases where that it makes sense, where the spec homes are on their way out. You don't want to mark your spec homes as inactive and sales restrict because somebody won't be able to write a contract on them. So you can put a warning there. So when you do the elevations, you change your sales restrict and inactive based off of your specific needs, and then you run the import. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about how to remove the noise of options that are no longer for sale anywhere. So we at times will need to discontinue options in specific developments or within specific models and elevations within community. In this case, what we're talking about is here's a bunch of options that we used to sell. We used to sell, mowing upgrade or mowing bath accessories, and we switched to something else. And so we want to discontinue a whole set of options. This is a great function to do that. Now, in this case, we're using the UI, the user interface, and we're going to job cost options, and we're going to option file, and we're hitting the export button. And we're going to, we click the export, you got export ... up there in the top center. That opens up this next dialog box, which allows you both to export and import. And in this case, you can export that box, or excuse me, you can click that button, and you could export that, and it gives you an Excel sheet. And you can you can make these sales as inactive, and then you could copy that Excel file and re-import it back in. So once you do all of those and you have it in your clipboard and import it back in, you can render hundreds of options that you no longer are going to be selling anywhere, instantly make them inactive so they are not visible anywhere. So it's a very powerful way at within a company, but above a bunch of developments, how you can render those options as not available for sale. Now, if you're within a specific company and you want to make certain options within a company no longer for sale, you can work within the company, and you can go into job cost options, budget maintenance. And what we're looking at to do here is to just remove those options for sale, and I'm saying remove because I'm talking about pruning the noise, but this is also where you would want to go if you wanted to change a large amount of prices of options. You can make those changes or other adjustments to it. And you're going to want to enter this and open up the headers and open up the header, which gives you kind of like the top line of every option. So you have your sales price, whether or not it's available for sale or not. And when you export this, you'll modify that data, and then again, bring that data back in using the import function of the same. So with Mark Systems and your offerings, we talked through purging your models, purging your elevations, purging your options across within a company, across the entire company, and then purging the specific models and elevations. I'm a big fan of, if we discontinue a model, the Magnolia is gone, I'm going to go into my option budget maintenance, and I'm going to remove those from sale, even though no one could see it because you can't choose the model elevation. I want to be able to remove those from sale because I want to be able to export my option budget file and know that everything that says inactive or not sales restricted, I know that it's valid and it's a viable model option elevation option combination that can in fact be for sale. So I'm a big fan of and that's a small thing, and it's something you don't do routinely. You probably would just simply discontinue the elevation and be done with it. But go back in and remove that noise. Noise is anything that causes you to look at it, but it's not necessary to see. We want to remove that and get back to where we're focusing only on the signal, the things that drive results. All right. We're going to pivot to the second project, and I know these are both within Mark Systems and they're both purging, but that first project is really helping to ensure that the sales team only sees what they should see, removing all the noise from them. And now we're going to do the same thing for purchasing, estimating, and accounting. And we're going to start with cost codes. This one is probably one of the ones that is most often generating a lot of noise, just simply because if we don't have any material list or contracts, it doesn't really matter, air quotes, but I like to keep things incredibly clean. Perfection is when there's nothing else to remove. So I want to keep this clean. And this one, I would use the export data to Excel. And to do so, we're going to go into export data to Excel and select cost code master. Now, there's also another one, category master, which shows you the name of the category. For instance, if 220 is foundations, that you'll see 220 foundations. This one takes you to 218 in this case, which is whatever 218 is, but this one doesn't give you the description of it. If you don't know what those 218, 220 are, you can actually export your category master first and then your cost code master second. You have those in 2 Excel files, and then you could do an XLOOKUP to be able to grab the title. So if you need help on that, just give me a shout. But in this particular case, there are cost codes that the system nobody needs any longer, and we want to eliminate them. Now, this one I encourage estimating and purchasing folks to be really careful and mindful of, because we think, well, we're not generating any costs here, so therefore the entire world revolves around us, so man, the cost code must not be necessary anymore. A little tongue-in-cheek, but that's certainly not the case. There are cost codes that the organization uses that purchasing and estimators don't deal with. Very possibly a lot of stuff in the land dev process that they're using Mark Systems and they're developing land in-house. Possibly in the sales side or the finance side, above our kind of where purchasing and estimating lives, from 200 to 600. Those things above and below that, I would suggest you don't even mess with if you're not focusing on those. But once you know what cost categories or cost codes you no longer need, you can select all, export, and you get the Excel file on the right. You make those that you do not any longer need. You flip those yes, or they were blank, you make them a yes, and then again, you import it back into the system. And in doing so, you won't see them when you're making your cost code selections. And again, I understand the argument, well, you won't see them anyway in my budgets and those sort because I don't have any backup behind it. But we don't want anybody accidentally coding to these cost codes. A lot of times we do see that, like, well, man, cost code, 33001 was exterior doors, then 33018 was doors exterior, so I went to the wrong one. Well, we told you we're not using 300-01. Don't put somebody in that spot. That I used to say that if anybody has to remember anything, the system's not done. If you have to remember not to use 300-01, the system isn't done. Get it inactive so you can't, Jason, often says, make the right way easy and the wrong way hard. We want to make it very hard to accidentally code something to the wrong cost code. And a little special note here for you guys in purchasing. You can be thinking, well, I am the only one working in 200 to 600, and I know that we don't have any intended costs going against these cost codes. Be very careful, because rendering it inactive here will prevent VPOs from the field, VPOs from the system, and invoices as well. And so you don't want to be guessing here. Usually this is a collaborative approach. You got developers, development team, purchasing, estimating, maybe production, and definitely accounting in here to make sure that you're not accidentally with error, making something inactive that is necessary. All right. This is probably one of my favorites to discuss, but that's kind of embarrassing because that's like the most nerdy thing to say about this detail. So we've been...
Wait, real quick, Matt. While you're nerding out, I just have to tell you, like, you had me on the edge of my seat during this whole call so far, because I cannot even express how great it is to have clean data where you can actually make sure that people are using the right codes that they should be using, and that you're getting the reports that you want, and it's not clouded and all dirty with all the crud that isn't valid anymore, right? And the more you can streamline that and get that out of there, and like, it's so worth it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but seriously, I'm like, wow, you think you're nerding out now? You should have seen me before. I'm like, yes, that's great. All right, we'll go back to it.
Monica, you are definitely a bigger nerd than I am, and that does not surprise me about you at all. And I say that with that's a compliment. So,
awesome, I love it. I'll take it. All right.
So all you listeners, you wonder, I wonder if Matt and Monica just talk around data. Yeah, that's actually does happen. And in this one is a lot of what I'm showing to you, and in this webinar come up as, I'm going to back up real quick. Often what happens is we do a lot of work to make the data look pretty good, and we give a report to somebody, Monica, as Monica said, we give a report to somebody like, well, this don't make sense because of this. And, oh yeah, okay, and I'll take out that cost code, or I'll, make whatever change. And we see that all the time as our subscribers to our dashboard are using the reports. Like, well, that doesn't look right. Well, it's right according to the data, but your data's wrong. So get the data correct, and your reports are amazing. And you just got to get the data right once. You just correct it, and then every report subsequently is right. And this one in particular, above all else, drives the most confusion, the most butting heads between departments. And here's the deal. Ease. When somebody says, how much is a house going to cost me? You run an elevation comparison report, or if you're in the Pulse, you're using margins-based houses, and you're looking at, this house should cost us $230,000 in directs, right? That number is based off of a bunch of other numbers that are tied to cost codes, right? 13 grand for this, 17 grand for this, $400 for this, and it adds that $220,000. That 13 grand for framing, whatever that is based on something else. So you got a materialist or a contract that drives a PO or a work order on a particular house, but that materialist and that contract also drive that budget. And that one line budget drives that total, which drives the overall gross profit margin targets for the organization. So if I'm selling a house at 280 and I think my costs are 220, so I got 60,000 in gross, I'm making whatever that is, 20 some percent, but you're not, because your 220 isn't right. And a lot of times, and I was guilty of this when I was in this role, like, yeah, but it's not right, but it's close, or something like, no, let's get it right. So what happens is, when that contract or that materialist is no longer needed to generate live POs or work orders. We changed from turnkey to, we used to do roofing, material labor separate, now we do roofing turnkey, right? We used to use 300-01, 300-02, now we moved all of it to 300-03. And by golly, we even deleted the material list or deleted that work order, expired it, and it's gone. Well, the system says when you rerun your budgets, it looks at that 13 grand that used to come from, you know, the material list, labor and material separate, you know, 6 grand, 7 grand. It sees that and it's like, well, shoot, that mattered at one point, but the system doesn't see where it came from this time. It used to have something, but now it doesn't. And so it flips the status of that 13 grand, or excuse me, 6 grand for one line, 7 grand for, it flips the status of that in your budget to the detail of the details. It flips it to an E status. Now, there's basically 3 statuses. There's 4, but I'm going to talk about 3. One status will be P, which means purchase order, which means it was driven from a materialist. Another status is C for contract work order. That's good. That means everything that we are saying this budget is based on will produce live info if we go live on a job. Wonderful, that's what we want. Then it also is based on any E. And so you could accidentally be overstating your budgets. If in that example I gave, we went from, I forget which direction I said, so we'll just pick it back up with. We went from materials and labor separate and we made it turnkey. Let's even say it's the exact same price. That's a good deal, turnkey, great. So now your budgets are gonna say, you know, 300-03, turnkey roofing, 13,000. And it's gonna have a P for purchase order material list as the status. It's also gonna say 300-01, materials, 6 grand, status E. 300-02, labor, 7 grand, status E. Those E's matter. They matter significantly. They definitely matter in base budgets, and they even more so matter in options because there's a lot of changes that we make, the cost codes, vendors, vendor assignments, and all this stuff in both options and base codes. So get them out. Somebody said, well, I use those to budget. There's better solutions to budget. Never use an E to be a placeholder of a budget. And if you want ideas on other solutions, feel free to give me a call. But don't use E's for that. Get the E's out. I say E's mean error, get them gone. So in order to do that, you would go to set up, this is base house, set up option elevation budgets and export budgets to a spreadsheet. And you have your company and your development that you're in. We are in killing it. As a nerd joke. So you go in there and this is your Excel file that comes out. And we are going to, first we're going to do is, let's see. Yeah, pardon me, that slide's incorrect. So I know this is about options, but what you would do is on your Excel, you see that thing that says status. What you would do in that status is put a filter on that. And you actually, and when you put a filter, and I'm sorry I have the slide wrong here, but the principle still works. So in your status, you filter by that. And just like in options here, we'll talk about in a second, you check your C and your P, which means contract, purchase orders, work orders, material list, and all that. That's what we want. You check those. And then you actually delete those lines from the Excel. You're not deleting them from Mark Systems, just from the Excel that it pulled up. And it will leave only the E's. And then you flip all of those E's, the delete row, to a yes. So again, sorry, I'll fix this slide here. If anybody wants the better version of it, I'll be happy to email it to you. But so what ended up happening, you have an Excel with all of your statuses. You filter and you delete from the Excel the C's and the P's, which means good. You know, we're good with that ones. Leaving only the E's. We change all of the yeses, or excuse me, all the no's to yeses into delete, and then we re-import that back in. And that will instantly remove those from this company, from this development. Now, you can also do that in options. And the options, it's through budget maintenance, and you go down to the details. When it gives you a choice both, or detail, or header lines, you do just the details. And you can do the same thing in options. And so this is an example of what it looks like when you select the C and the P. We filter on status, we check C and P, we uncheck E, and then we delete that. And once we're done, we will flip that no's to yeses. So hopefully that made sense. And again, sorry that the slide is incorrect here, but nevertheless, hopefully the point, and you'll see it in your system. Now, there's some other areas to prune noise, and actually, Monica, I originally was intending to include these, but by golly, I was getting a little bit long on time, so I definitely want to leave some time for Q&A. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But you can go in, and once you're done with this, so we've purged all of the things that are for sale that people see. We purged a lot of our costing and bad budgets. So now we either have good, correct budgets, or we got accurate budgets. And what I mean by that little nuance there is our budgets will at least be exactly what our POs are intending them to be. They'll be gone of ease. You know, if you see that your E's are actually plug numbers for concrete that you don't PO for, there's better ways of doing that. So where it's still a P or a C. So we get rid of the E's, which mean our budgets are accurate, and then we can improve from there. We can make the corrections as we need. Now, part of that is we can go into material list. Now, I am actually a fan of, if I am done in a community, or I'm done with a plan, or I'm done with a specific plan, model, elevation, combination, and community, I delete the material list. I want every line in my material list to be valuable and meaningful and actionable. I don't want any noise in my material list. Like I said before, some things you make inactive, some things you delete. I say delete the old material list. Even if you delete the budgets and you ain't gonna sell the option, just get the material list out of there. In contracts, Ethan, I was talking to Ethan a little bit, and his preferred method is he goes in and actually expires the old contracts. Now, some people will prefer to leave them as expired, perfectly fine, especially if you want to make sure this is, unlike material lists and products, if you use your product pricing correctly as Mark Systems intends, your pricing history per widget is within the product pricing history. I'm not a fan of deleting that. I want the history, so I'll have expired pricing and active pricing and effective pricing, excuse me. You can do the same thing in contracts. So you can expire those old contracts. So even though you're not offering that model for sale, get the contract. So therefore, you can look in every contract that is a effective date but not an expiration. You know it's legitimately driving dollars on the other end. Another one that I'm a big fan of deleting is old vendor dev assignments. If you're done in a community, the community's gone in the past, you can get rid of the vendor dev. If you're getting rid of the material list, go ahead and clean out that as well. So getting things done, real quick, I want to show you how the Pulse kind of addresses some of these things. Within the Pulse, our clients, subscribers can look and they can go to their bill of health, and this gives them where they have a lot of challenges. And I'm not going in all these dials here, but what this is saying is, in particular, you got some issues. You know, a couple things you're doing good on, a couple other issues, or a couple elements here, whatever, 6, 7 of them, 8, 9, that have some challenges that you need to address. And so, you know, if you click on one of those, you know, for instance, no source budgets or e-budgets, that's what no source budgets, we then allow it to drill down, and it actually, in this case, it actually pulls up everything. And then we also give you a video on how to use the file that we just created for you as the template for your import. And so we are really focused on ensuring that we give you the detail. In this case, even you can export this thing and it's ready to go as your import. We do that in several cases. So really want to help you and your chair. Our goal with the Pulse is to really assist frontline operators. Yes, C-suite matters, they pay the bills, right? But frontline operators, giving you the tools so that you can work, get the job done. You know, one of the lines that Jason and I use a lot is, you can be the hero without working like one. So key takeaways. If seeing old data does cost you dollars, maybe not. Effectiveness, yes. If so, that means dollars. Don't kid yourself. Cleaning up that old data, it can be done quickly, thoroughly, and completely by you. These are 2 large projects that you can knock out in less than a day, and you can be the hero without working like one. So, Monica, I don't know if any questions came in, and if so, happy to discuss them, and really appreciate you, Terrell, and the entire ECI team for giving us a platform to chat through it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you. This was wonderful. It was really, really great. As I said in the middle, I had to interrupt because I couldn't stand any longer. If you have any questions, I just want to give you a reminder that you can type your question in that questions box on the side control panel. If you don't see it, you just hit that little arrow button at the top. It'll pull it out, and the questions box is right in there. I want to go back, if you don't mind, to your conclusion slide real quick. Because when you started talking about the seeing old data cost you, that really hit home for me, because it's true. Anybody who deals with any kind of data, there's old data in the system. And when it first becomes old, it's only one or two little things. And you just kind of like, oh, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But over time, it starts to multiply. And then you have all of these old things. And you have now new people that are dealing with these old things. And you have to explain the reason why they're no longer valid. So like you said, it may not cost you in physical dollars. You're not actually paying money for it, but the time and effort that you put into having that data there is just ridiculous to me. So I just wanted to comment on that. The other thing that I wanted to also comment on with the data and not cleaning that out is that it's depending on the type of data and what you're doing with it, it could lead to some misclassifications too, which then when you start looking at your reporting, then you start chasing the wrong problem and trying to solve these problems that actually aren't the problems because it's the data's in the wrong spot, or people are attributing things to the wrong things, and you can't really get there. So by doing this cleanup, I'm sure you've seen the builders that quite a bit with builders.
Yeah, most recently, it's really easy to do. The lot cost was going against 01507, but that was the land development raw lot cost to buy the raw land, and it was meant to go to 20101, and it wasn't. So some houses didn't have any lot costs, others did, and it's just exactly what you said. Just data cleanup.
Yeah, so you're making decisions about lot costs when the data is wrong. It's not because your lot costs are off, right?
Or somebody says, what was our margin on his house? Well, don't forget to add the 60,000 for the lot cost that wasn't there in that one report. I do say, any up and comers, and get a chance to talk and mentor anybody that's in this. I say, you want to grow in your career, so you want to be able to walk away from managing that data and for it to make absolute sense to the next person that sits down in that chair, and you position yourself to be able to grow and take on more responsibility. If you're known as the guy or girl that gets it done and just knows everything, don't mess with it because Monica knows what's going on, and that feels good because you're necessary, but you put a ceiling above you because you didn't maintain your data well. So even this career growth and opportunity, be able to be gone out of that, and for another person, like, makes a ton of sense. I understand exactly what's going on, and it actually changes careers.
Yeah, that's a great point too. We did have a couple of questions come in, so I'll go ahead and address those now. One of them is just on we talked about the recording being available. Are you able to send the information via PDF?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
go back to your contact.
Anyone can email me. I'd send you a slide deck and send you a couple Excel files if you want. No problem.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Matt. And then the next question is, if working with multiple companies under the system, is company code 100 and 400 removing cost codes? Is that company specific, or would that be for all companies within the system?
Cost codes sit above the company.
Okay, and so they have 4 separate companies in this system. So it would, okay, so you don't work companies.
So, if company 100 doesn't use it, but 400 does, you can't remove it. It's cost codes sit above. They're at the master level. So that makes people mad.
Yeah, thank you, she says. Thank you. So great. No, but these are really, like you said, these are great summer projects to do, especially if you have a few extra moments. And the quick cleanup is really important too. I like those shortcuts with the Excel and being able to change the status really quickly, because that makes a huge difference.
Thanks to you and the team there, because I've seen over the years here, I've seen more and more of that, really focusing on that user experience. And I think you guys really have taken that seriously. Somebody saying, I got to deal with 300 lines of, and no problem. So great job to you guys and the team there, just to enable that functionality. It makes a difference.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, no, the developers have been doing quite a bit of work on a lot of different things in the system lately. So it's been good. It's always good to see how much we can bring it along and really be responsive to what builders are looking for and in managing their projects and their homes and stuff. So I don't see any other questions that have come in, but if you do have any questions or if you have any comments or you want to just have a conversation about your data and how you can get that cleaned up, again, I can't emphasize, I mean, Matt said it, but I'll emphasize it too, like just clean data. Oh, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention. I have a note here that I wanted to say is that you don't have to get to perfect, right? So you can start these projects and it's not like you're going to complete it really by the end of the summer. You're going to make a big dent in it, but then you're going to see other data that needs to be cleaned up as well, and you'll continue it. So I would almost say it's more of a continuous kind of effort and project.
No doubt, yeah, and even like that one with ease, every time you run a budget update, you got to go deal with that because it just keeps building up. So if you maintain it, it's a heck of a lot easier, just do it in the moment. But for sure, there's no done, there's no finished.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, any questions, feel free to email Matt directly or give him a call. And thank you everyone for spending time with us today. We appreciate you being here and have a great afternoon.
We'll see you, Monica.
All right, see you later. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.